One of the most frequently asked questions among CNC newbies has to be, what's the best dust boot? Well, until recently, I've said it's the PwnCNC V9. A lot of people are going to say it's the Nighthawk. I've used both of those boots. They're good boots, and they have the drawbacks. Those drawbacks caused me to design my own dust boot. I call it the Big Suck. Why? It's big, and its job is to suck. Well, the first time I turned this thing on, I noticed a rumble. It kind of reminded me of a muscle car. I was a little surprised, a little worried, actually. It was a sound I hadn't heard before out of a dust boot. Well, based on that and seeing its performance a little bit, I decided I'd go ahead and do a benchmark. I'll measure the performance of all three of these dust boots, and I'll share with you guys which one's better and by how much. And before I get into this, I know the internet's going to be cruel. I'm going to get ripped for everything. It's going to be, my testing methodology is no good. My equipment that I'm using is the wrong equipment. I have a bias towards one of the products. I'm too ugly. I need a haircut. Whatever. I'm going to get all kinds of this stuff, and I'll deal with it. I think this is important stuff, and we should have an objective evaluation of what is the best dust boot. And I'll try to be as fair as I can to the process. With that, I guess I'll throw one more caveat out there and say, this is my testing in my environment. Your environment may vary. I'll share with you the details about my test setup so you can assess how similar or different or how applicable or not that is to your environment. And the testing results in your environment are probably going to vary a little bit. I would bet that they're going to be consistent with these results, but you're free to test it yourself if you want to confirm my findings. With that, let's get into it.
Now we'll go through the setup a little bit. I have a Clearview CV1950 that runs the whole shop. In this shop, there are 6 trunks that hang off of the main trunk, and there are about 16 tools that have their individual branches with branch gates. I'm going to leave this one, trunk 2, open, as well as the miter saw's tool gate open, so that we simulate a more realistic scenario where I'm using another tool while the CNC is doing its work. And that'll take a little bit of the airflow away from the CNC. So we'll also leave the CNC gate open, or the trunk gate open, and the CNC gate itself open. So then we will test the airflow with this BT100 airflow meter. We're going to measure in feet per minute as an air velocity, and then we'll try to calculate the CFMs as well and see how that works out. And then we're going to do this with the boots lowered down so that the brushes are 1 inch off of the spoil board. So we have a fair comparison there. And we will have the spindle lowered down so that it is 55 millimeters off of the spoil board, which gives it enough room to clear the fan and have a little bit of room left over, simulating the approximate length of a tool doing a cut. And with that, let's get started testing. The Nighthawk was the first dust boot that I bought. Overall, I was happy with it, but I didn't like the fact that I had to remove it in order to use my laser, which mounted on the front of the spindle. So that was a problem for me. I also found it inconvenient to have to dig out an Allen wrench to make adjustments to its height whenever I wanted to do that, which I had to do because I changed tools quite a bit. So overall, though, it was a good boot. It is a good boot, and I still use it for the rotary where I can't afford to give up the Z clearance that the rear mount dust boots require. Another great thing about this, by the way, is the fact that that bottom plate with the brush on it can be swapped out really quickly for brushes of other lengths. That's a nice thing. And we can see it perform at a peak of 1850 feet per minute. I bought the PwnCNC V9 mostly because I was tired of having to remove the Nighthawk in order to use the laser and swap back and forth all the time. Now, when I got it, I noticed another really awesome advantage of the V9 was this removable front, which allowed me to see the bit completely, which is great if you're into videoing your cuts, but also if you just want to look at it. That also made it really easy to access the callout for tool changes. And you can see here it performs at 708.7 feet per minute. I didn't notice a lot of performance problems with my V9, so I was surprised to see that number so low. I thought that was too low. So you can see here, I'm going to try again and just wrap my hands around the meter and the brush to try to create a better seal and see what happens. When I wrap my hands around it, I get 1043, which still isn't close to the Nighthawk. Now, when I added larger drag chains, the hose started rubbing on the trough for the drag chains, so I had to come up with another solution that would allow the hose to clear the trough. So I created this offset adapter that does that, and I expected that that would reduce the performance of the V9. However, in this testing, it actually improved it. And you can see me checking here a couple times because I was kind of in disbelief that that would improve it. So the result came in at 748.1, which I was surprised by. I thought the offset adapter was going to reduce the performance, but it turns out it actually improves it. So I tested again to confirm. I did this actually a few times, and the results were consistent. And I did the hand seal thing again, just to see if that was consistent, and it turns out it was. The result there came in at 1142, just a little bit better than what the V9 did by itself. You know, I really don't know why I set out to design my own dust boot. I knew I could probably do some things that improve performance a little bit, but I didn't think that there was really a problem with the V9's performance, at least not in my case. And there's no secret whatsoever, I absolutely copied a lot of the design ideas from the V9. I really liked that boot. I just thought it could be a little bit better. So I made that sweep that's in the back to bring the airflow in more gradually. I thought that would help performance a little bit. And I put a raised collar on the front so that the gap that exists between the boot and the spindle that allows air to be sucked in from above the boot would be pretty much closed up. And I also made the dust track insert and removable so that you could quickly change from one brush to another brush length with just having a spare track on hand. And you can see the performance came in at 2165, which is surprisingly higher than the Nighthawk, which I thought was going to actually be a better performer. After getting done with this first round of testing, I was just so surprised by the Nighthawk not outperforming the Big Suck that I took a closer look at things. And I noticed that I had a 1/4 inch shorter brush on the Big Suck than I did on the Nighthawk, which means that the bottom of the opening in the enclosure body of the boot was a little bit closer to the meter in the case of the Big Suck. So I ran the test again with the Nighthawk after lowering the boot another 1/4 inch. It got a little bit better performance, but not a lot better performance. It ended up with 1988. Now, that's probably a little bit favoring the Nighthawk because it has the extra long brush helping it as well, but I don't think it's very material. They're both good performers. So let's summarize the results. You can see here I've color-coded the results for each of the different test configurations. The one asterisk in the table is for that Nighthawk's performance. It got 1988 in the second try where it was lowered a little bit, and I think that's the most fair representation, so that's why it's shown here. But there's a tiny caveat there which I wouldn't pay much attention to. Performance-wise, the Big Suck is the winner by 8.9%, so almost 9% improvement over the Nighthawk, at least in this configuration. Both the Nighthawk and the Big Suck have the quick change brush capability, which I think is a great feature in a dust boot. They both support the large drag chains. Only the V9 with the offset adapter, which actually has a little bit better performance than the V9 by itself, also supports the drag chain. tool visibility, with all the rear mount boots, it's really good, especially because you can take off that front piece and get complete visibility into what's happening there. That's great for seeing the tool yourself or for taking a video of what's happening while you're cutting. Nighthawk just doesn't do that. All the rear boots, the V9, the V9 with the offset, and the big suck, don't obstruct the spindle mount. So if you want to mount a laser or something else on the front of your spindle, you can. With the Nighthawk, it gets in the way. You have to actually take it off to do that. And then, of course, you can see which ones are rear, which ones are front mount, where's the variable and fixed heights. I don't know if you have a preference for those or not, but that's shown here just for the sake of completeness. I think the clear winner here, both in performance and overall feature set, is the big suck. The Nighthawk is a close runner-up in performance, but doesn't have all the features that the big suck does. So the big suck is just a better dust boot, in my opinion. And the V9, whether it's the V9 or by itself or the V9 with the offset adapter, really the big suck at a similar price point is outmodes the V9 at this point. And you know, the PwnCNC guys are great. I hate to say that about that product, but I'm just trying to be honest. So if you have any questions, any complaints, want to complain about my haircut or anything else and the test methodology, whatever, just leave it in the comments.